Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I am your host, Hung Lu, and we are going to be starting with our Money Matters episode today. So it is June the 9th, 2025. So thank you for tuning in. And today I am going to share with you how to make some extra cash every single year with your portfolio. And this applies as long as you have a rental property, you can do this strategy. Okay, so before I get into that, just to share an event that is happening this week. So if you are local to I was going to say Edmonton, but no, if you are local to Vancouver, we have a happy hour happening in Vancouver, Victoria, and I think one in Toronto as well. So this is for this Wednesday. If you are interested in connecting, it is part of the Women's Real Estate Network, REN, but you do not need to be a female to attend. Okay, so even if you are a guy and you want to come and participate, feel free to do so. Just reach out to me and I will help you RSVP and make sure you go to the right location. So that is happening this Wednesday at 5 p.m. The one in Vancouver, the one that I'm going to be attending, is at the Tap and Barrel in Olympic Village. Okay, so that is the event that is happening this week. Okay, so let's jump right into how to make. On the title, it says 500,000. Okay, so it could be more and it could be less than that. So just keep that in mind because it does depend on what your portfolio size is and how much you're able to raise the rents by. So let me bring up the Excel sheet and let's jump right into the calculation here. All right, so this applies as long as you have a rental property and you can do this, okay? And the amount that you will make depends on how many units you have. So before you take my advice on how to do rental increases every single year, just make sure you check with somebody else because this might not actually be a good strategy for you because you do want to balance out having great tenants and potentially raising the rent so much that they can't stay there. And then you got to get new tenants and then having to deal with a vacant unit potentially for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Okay. So this question came up. So thanks to James. So thanks, James, for asking this question. And now I'm going to share it out in cyber world. Okay. So the benefits of doing the rental increase is that you can increase your cash flow, keep your ROI intact. So there's lots of benefits of doing this rental increase every single year. And I know that there's people out there who are like, Hong, you know what? I've got a great tenant. I don't want to do a rental increase. That's totally fine. That's a personal choice. However, I would suggest that you at least do some increase, especially in places like Toronto or Ontario and BC, where we're capped on that rental increase, that annual increase every single year. You want to make sure that you keep up with inflation, keep up with the cost of expenses because every single year your expense is going up. Okay, so highly recommended that you at least do a rental increase at least once a year, even if it's not for the full amount. Okay, so let's jump right into this. So I've got this set up for 2024. So usually I would do this for actually 2026 now. So this is an old sheet I have here. So let's just go in and update some of this here. So 2026, and let's just say I have a rental unit that's going for 1,800. And I'm going to run Toronto numbers here, okay? So usually around 2%, like the last few years have been around 2.25%. So it's not a ton. Okay, so you put in the tenant's monthly rent, and then you put in whatever the percentage you're allowed to increase for that year. Okay, so now I've got this spreadsheet set up that it just calculates for me that I'm going to be able to increase the rent by $36 every single month for this particular tenant. And the calculation for that is just the 1,800 times the 2%. So this number for you will change depending on what percentage you can increase by and what their starting monthly rent is. Okay, so that's their current rent right now. It's not what they started with, let's say 5 years ago. Okay, it's what the rent is now. So you take 1,800 times 2%, and that gives you the $36 increase per month. Okay. So the new rent for this is going to be the 1,800 plus the $36. So pretty easy math there. Okay, so the new rent going forward is $1,836. Okay, now if you're charging extra for laundry, parking, storage, all of that stuff, that would be depending on how you have your rent, your lease structured. If that amount is part of your 1,800, then you just increase everything across the board, and that's fine. If it's a separate item, then it's up to you if you want to increase it by your allowable amount as well, or you could increase it a smaller portion. That's entirely up to you. Okay. So in this case, I've got $50 down for laundry. With this $50 laundry, I can increase that up to a max of this 2% as well. Okay. So I'm going to run the example here and I'm going to just assume that I'm not increasing the $50 on the laundry. Okay, so what this means is that every single year, if I didn't increase the rents and if the rent stayed at 1,800, my annual rental income just for that unit before expenses is 21,600. And that is just 1,800 times 12. Okay, so 1,800 times 12. Now, when I increase the rents by $36 a month, it's going to go up to $22,032. So let's just calculate what this is. So it should just be $36 times 12. Okay, so it's going to go up by $432. Okay, so this is money that is part of my rental income. And yes, I do have to pay taxes on this. Like it's going to be taxable. But now I've got $432 that I can apply to the mortgage, that I can apply to expenses. Okay. So one of the things that I used to do quite a bit was if I didn't need this $432, I would take the full 32 and apply it right to my mortgage. Okay. So then that way I'm tackling my principal. So that's sort of like a side strategy on how to pay down your mortgage as quickly as possible, because then you're saving your interest money. Okay. So let's just do a back check here. So if I take 36 times 12, yeah, see, it's the same number. So that means I've done my math right. Okay. So this $432 is the increase in your rental income for the 1 year for this one tenant in this one unit based on all of these numbers. Okay, so now let's just say that you've got 40 units. So in one of my projects, I've got 40 units and let's just say we can increase the rents by $36 across the board on all of these units. Okay, that means that this property is going to see an increase of $1,440 per month. Okay, that is huge. Like you think about it, that's one of the major benefits of having a multifamily is the scalability, right? $36 is not that big of a deal at the end of the month, but $1,440 is quite a bit of money. Okay. So now you take that and you times that by 12. So you take the 1,440 times 12, that will give you your total increase in net income before expenses. So it's just the rental income, okay, that we're talking about here. $17,000. That's huge. Okay. So now let's just say our cap rate is 4.5%. So if you're in Alberta, the cap rate's going to be a little bit higher. In Toronto, it's a little bit lower than this, but let's just say the cap rate's 4.5. The property, the place where I have this 40 unit building is around a 4.5% cap rate. Okay, just by having that cap rate of 4.5, the value of my building has actually gone up by $384,000. Think about that. Just by increasing across the board all the units by $36, I've increased my property value by $384. Okay, so now I know on the title I said like $500,000. Okay, so that was because I think I had 3.5% here. Okay, so let's just say, yeah. So let's just say I was able to increase this rent across the board by 3%. Okay, that extra 1% allows me to increase my property value by $576,000. Okay, this is huge because now if I'm at the point where I can refinance or if I'm switching to a new lender, if they get a new appraisal, my building's gone up by 500,000 just because of this one increase this one year. Okay. So now imagine if next year I increase again. Okay. And then I increase it again the following year. Okay. This is like continuous. It's not just like a one-time increase. It's every single year I get to increase the rents. And by increasing the rents, I get to see $500,000 on my property. Okay, so let's just say I've got one unit. Okay, so that is an increase. Okay, so if I only have one unit, which that's a single family home, and so it's a different strategy doing single family homes versus a multifamily. Okay, so if you just had one unit and you increase the rents, that would increase your property value by $14,000. Okay, not a bad thing, right? Because you can actually still go and refinance, tap into that equity. Okay, so on some of my properties, it's like a triplex. So by doing a rental increase, I'm going to go back to 2% here, so it's more realistic for Toronto numbers. Okay, on my triplexes, if I increase the rents across the board by 2% a year, that's a $28,000 value increase. Like I've increase my net worth basically by about $28,000. Okay, that's the way to read this. Like it's massive. So if you're back here and let's go to 40 units here. By increasing your building value by $384,000, you've increased the project net worth. Okay, and if you're the only owner on this, your net worth in your corporation has gone up by $384,000. That's massive. Okay, so let's make sure that we're talking about a few things. Yeah, we definitely talked about the scalability. So going from, 1 to 3 to 40 plus units. Okay. Oh, rental discounts. Okay, so this is something that I get all the time around. Well, Hung, especially with my tenants who are like, hey, Hung, can I get a rental discount because I'm helping you, take care of the garden, or I'm helping you shovel the lawn, or yeah, stuff like that. Okay. So if you are doing like offering incentives to your tenants, my suggestion is to still take the full rent amount, increase it with whatever you're allowed, go to the full increase that you're allowed to. So this 1836, and then give the discount based on that. Okay. So let's just say you give them a $50 discount. Okay, so now your new rent is going to be your 1836 less your $50. Okay, so now what you're going to do in effect is get them to send you 1836 so that you have that on your books. It's recordable, traceable. And then you, as yourself or your company, you would send a rebate to your tenant for the $50. Okay. So in essence, they're only giving you 1786, but on paper, you've gotten the 1836. Okay. Now this is where I do need to give that disclosure again. This is what I'm doing on my properties, but you do need to check with your accountant to make sure that this is legitimate for you and that this is something that makes sense for you guys. Okay. This is the way I've been dealing with rent discounts on my properties because now the tenants are happy to get that discount, and I'm able to show the 1836 on my books, but also because if the tenants are late on rent, they don't get this discount anymore. Okay. Or if they up and leave or don't pay the rent at all, okay, then they don't get this discount for the month, right? So there's a lot of other benefits on doing the discount based on this way. Okay. And then at the end of the month, really, in essence, they're only paying the 1786, but I get to report 1836. And then this $50 is a discount that I actually write against my expense line. Okay. So it all works out to be the same thing. Okay. So rental increases. So regardless of where you have your investment property, your rental increases per year will be dictated by that province. So in Ontario and BC, it's heavily rent controlled, right? So we can only increase it per year by a set number. Okay. And one of the questions that I always get is, well, Hung, why do you still like Ontario and BC more than places that have rent control? Like, so in Alberta, you can Yeah, every single year, regardless of how long the tenant's been there, you can raise the rent as much as you want. That one, like within after 12 months, you can raise it as much as you want, right? Okay. So why would I prefer Ontario and BC where there's heavy rent control compared to these other places? Okay. And so why would I want a 2% cap or a 3% cap on my rental income this way? Okay. So partly my answer is, well, I started in Toronto, so it's not like I knew any better. Okay. But now that I've been an investor and I've got properties all across Canada, I still prefer to buy my investment properties if I can in BC or in Ontario, because even though there's rent control, there's a few other benefits of buying in those provinces. One is that the cap rates are lower in those provinces, specifically the areas that I buy in. And so the value increase is significant. And that's a wealth building tool to consider. So being able to increase the rents by, whatever amount, that's great for cash flow, but cash flow is taxed differently than an equity increase. Okay. This equity increase, I can refinance, take out this money as much as the bank will give me, and it's tax free. So for me, that's way better than paying taxes on the cash flow. Okay. The other thing is that because I've got multiple properties in Ontario and BC, I have more borrowing power because of those properties than my properties in Alberta or Saskatchewan. So the borrowing power from properties in rent controlled areas is significantly better. Okay, so what else? Oh, vacancies. So usually vacancies are lower in Toronto and, let's say, Vancouver. Okay. Usually, like, it was only until COVID where I started actually having some vacancies. But prior to COVID, I had 0% vacancy in my Toronto properties. So for me, that turnover period, like that 2 weeks to 1 month to sit vacant on a property, that really cuts into your annual income. Okay. And for me, so I don't know if this came through clearly, is that where there's places with rent control, if your cap rate is lower, you pretty much have, it's not a guaranteed appreciation, but it's steady appreciation. It's like steady going up, right? It's not this up and down, up and down, up and down. So the steady appreciation, the passive appreciation is what gives me my value increase, but it's what gives me my net worth growth year over year. Okay, so that is what I have for you today in terms of how to increase your value across the board. And if you're in my situation where you've got, 40 plus units and you're doing that rental increase a year, you're looking at $500,000 easily increasing your net worth. Okay, so that is what I have for you. My name is Hung Lu. I am with Cash Property. And if there is a like button available to you, give me a like. And if there's a subscribe button somewhere, click on that subscribe. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful Monday.